By the end of today's video, you will be able to cut your own off-shoulder princess dart bustier. Hello and welcome to Everything April YouTube channel. I want to thank all who view my video, and I implore you to subscribe and turn on the notification bell to be notified each time I upload a new video. Thank you. Today's tutorial is a part 1 of a 3-part tutorial. So I will be cutting an off-shoulder princess dart bustier gown with a cape at the neck and a 2-step peplum at the bottom just above the knee. I have 4 yards of Ankara fabric, I have my lining, I have hair stay, I have soft stay, paper stay, I have my zip, my rulers, my tape and my scissors. Let's get into the video. For you to know how many fabric you would fold for your pattern, you have to divide your biggest body circumference by 4 and add about 3 inches or 4 inches to it. My biggest circumference is my bust. My bust is 38. 38 divided by 4 is 9.5, so I've gone ahead to add 3 more inches to that measurement. I've gone ahead to draw out some lines and I'll be taking you through these lines. This is an off-shoulders bustier, and I've gone ahead to remove 5 inches from my normal measurement. You can remove about 4 inches, you can remove 5, you can remove 6 depending on what you want to make. So I've gone ahead to remove 5. So my start line, I'll be starting from 5 inches. From 5 inches to 10 inches is my bust point plus half inch seam allowance, which will make it 10.5. And my under bust is 14 inches plus half inch seam allowance, making it 14 and a half. My half length is 16 inches plus half inch seam allowance, making it 16 and a half. And I have half inch to join the upper part to the lower part of the gown. So to continue, I have to measure my neckline. For you to know the neckline you'll be using for your off shoulders, you have to minus 2 or 1.5 inches from half of your shoulder measurement. The shoulder measurement I'm working with is 8 inches. 8 inches minus 2 inches will give me 6 inches, so I'll be working with 6 inches. To these 6 inches, I'll be adding half an inch seam allowance to it, making it 6.5. For my armhole, I would be measuring out 4 inches, which is the standard for an off-shoulders armhole. Or since my round armhole is 18 divided by 2 is 9 inches, I'll go ahead and mark the remaining 4 inches from the 5 inches I've removed for my armhole. And this is what I'm drawing out like so. On my armhole line, I'll be putting quarter of my bust measurement, and quarter of my bust measurement is 9.5, so I'll go ahead and mark out 9.5 like so. Using my armhole curve, I'll be connecting my neck width to my to the a quarter of my bust measurement that I've marked out to form my armhole for this dress. Then I'll go out to mark out my bust span measurement. The bust span I'm working with is 9. 9 divided by 2 is 4.5 plus half inch seam allowance. Since I'm drafting on my fabric directly, that will make it 5 inches. I'll mark out these lines on my bust point, my under bust point and my waistline and connect it like so. Then for my darts, on my waistline, I'll be coming in by half an inch like so on this side, and on the other side I'll be taking 1.5 inch darts. I'll be marking 1.5 inch darts on the other side like so. On my under bust line, I'll be taking 1 inch on the side on one side I'll be taking 1 inch dart, and the other side I'll be taking 1.5 inch dart, like so. That means I took out 2 inches dart from my waist, and my under bust I took out 2.5 inches dart, and I'll be connecting the lines together like so. Then on my bust, from my bust point, I'll be coming down by 1 inch like so. Then I'll use my armhole curve to connect this 1 inch I came down by to the dart legs on my under bust like so. Then on my armhole curve, since this is a princess that we are drafting, I'll be coming out from my start line. I'll be coming down by 2.5 inches, and at the 2.5 inches I came down from, I'll be taking 1 inch dart on both sides. I'll take 1 inch on both sides of the 2.5 inches I came out by, like so. Then I'll connect these lines to my bust point. I'll connect it to the dart at my bust point like so. I'll measure out the dart which I've taken 2 inches dart. For me not to have shortage, I'll be adding back these 2 inches dart to the line of the, I'll be replacing the 2 inches like so to avoid shortage. I've added back these 2 inches to this line, the dart line, and I'm connecting it back to the armhole like so, and this forms our new armhole. And I'm going ahead to smoothen out the curves, to smoothen out every sharp part of this curve, to make everything smooth. Then on the chest line, I'll be measuring out what will be cutting off, because when we cut the dart we would have shortage, so I'm measuring what would be removed from the chest line, and that's 1 inch. So I'll be replacing the 1 inch from my initial bust measurement. I'll be adding this 1 inch to it, then I'll be adding extra 2.5 inches seam allowance, 1 inch for joining the darts together when I cut it, and then 1.5 inch seam allowance. Then at my waist, I'll be imputing quarter of my waist measurement. My waist is 34 divided by 4 will give me 8.5, plus the 2 inches that I'll be removing, that will make it 10.5. then I'll be adding 2.5 inches seam allowance as well, 1 inch for joining the darts together, and 1.5 inch for seam allowance, and I'll connect these lines together like so. For my neckline, I'll be for my neck depth, I'll be coming down by 1.5 inches. You can do 1 inch, you can do 1.5, you can do 2 inches depending on what you're going for. But for this tutorial, I'm using 1.5 inch neck depth, and I'm connecting it back to my neck width like so. And I'm going ahead to smoothen out all sharp edges at the dart to make everything smooth. Then I'll go ahead and check my measurements over again to make sure that everything is complete and correct in order not to have shortage. After checking that everything is okay, I'll then go ahead and cut out my fabric. I'll cut out everything. Please make sure you recheck to make sure that you have the accurate measurement, that you added back your darts, the ones you're cutting off, that you added seam allowance before you go ahead to trim out your pattern or your fabric in any case. So I've trimmed out everything, and this is my completes my front pattern. I have my front pattern already drawn and cut out. After this, I'll go into cutting the. For my back pattern, I've gone ahead to fold the fabric into two. I've drawn out some basic lines from 5 inches, which is our start line, to 9 inches our chest line, then to 16.5 inches, which is the half length, plus the half inch to join the lower part to it. And I've measured out the zipper allowance, which is 1.25 inches, and all my measurements will be starting from the zipper allowance line. On the chest line, I'm imputing quarter of my chest measurement, like so. Then I'm also imputing the same neck width I used for the front neckline, and I'm connecting the two points I've made together like so to form my back armhole. Then I'll go ahead and put my bust span measurement, half of my bust span measurement, which is 4.5. I will not be adding any seam allowance to this because I'm using just a waist dart for the back. Then from the chest line, I'm coming down by 1 inches. Then I'm taking half inch on both sides of my bust span line and connecting it back to the 1 inch I came down from, like so, to form my dart for the back. This dart will be sewn in and I will not be cutting it off. My neck depth for the back, I'm taking 1.5 inches and I'm connecting it back to the neck width, just like I did for the front neck. I'll be connecting the lines together. My neck depth is 1.5 inches, connecting it back to the neck width, like so. I've gone ahead to add 1.5 inch seam allowance to the back, to the chest line. And for my waist, I'm putting half of a quarter of my waist measurement plus the 1 inch that I've taken, and then 1.5 inch seam allowance. And I'll be connecting the lines together like so. Then for my zipper allowance, I'll be removing half inches and connecting it back to the chest line like so to avoid zip bulge. This is done to avoid zip bulge, the folding at the back when you wear your dress or your gown. Then from that line, I'll be measuring out 1.25 inches again to form my new zipper allowance, like so. I'll connect these lines together to form my new zipper allowance. This line would be my new zip allowance, as I'll be trimming out the half inches out when cutting out this pattern. Then from the waist, I'll be coming up by 1 inch and connecting it back to the side seam as shown, as you're seeing me do. I'll connect it back, and this is to avoid the back going down and the front going up when you wear your dress or your gown. Then I'm rechecking my measurements. I'm rechecking everything to make sure that everything is complete and okay, that I've added all my allowances and my measurements accurately. Then I'll go ahead and trim out my pattern like so. Please, I implore you to please subscribe to my channel, turn on the notification bell, share my video with your friends, and like my video if you enjoyed watching it. This is just the part 1 of this tutorial. There will be the next part which will show the cutting of the skirt and the peplum. The 2-step peplum I'll be adding to the dress, and there will also be a part 3 of this video which will show the sewing process of the dress. Please like, share and subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video.